Hey everyone, it's Aesah, and welcome to my video for patch 14.3 meta update. As of the time of recording this video, the patch has been out for less than 24 hours, so still really early, but we'll give some initial impressions and look at some data to see what comps are performing well. So the biggest winner of this patch, I believe, is Street Demon. Data is reflecting this as well. Basically, Street Demon at this 7 breakpoint got buffed from 15% to 17%, which in terms of percent change, this is more than a 10% buff. So it's actually pretty impactful, as well as a lot of the other top comps getting nerfed, most notably Zeri, with some hollow bow changes, and just Slayers as well. Just basically other dominant comps getting nerfed, Street Demon getting a pretty big buff. It's doing really well. So trying to hit that 7th Street Demon breakpoint, especially that got the buff, is going to be really good. But otherwise, just kind of playing the way you used to play it last patch. I have a video on, I believe I call it like Techie, Street Demon Techie or Strategist. Basically, Brand Ziggs is also going to be acceptable as well. However, I think like playing around 7 Street Demon is really good. And then you'll have an extra unit slot on level 8. It can maybe be a Ziggs, maybe a Bruiser like Kobuko. Kobuko is changed so he doesn't need his Cyber Boss bonus in order to do the 2-hex AoE, so it's really good there. And just some of the individual units got buffs as well. Mundo and Zara both got individual buffs that won't just make your early game a little smoother. Rengar got nerfed, but it's okay. A lot of times you're not playing him on your final board as well. You'll replace him with Samira, who also got a buff this patch. Twisted Fate, this comp is similar to old, similar to before. Twisted Fate himself got some adjustments to where he doesn't scale off attack speed as much. Rageblade is still his best item, but double Rageblade is no longer ideal. A build like this is going to be just as good as double Rageblade. I think it's honestly slightly better. And as long as you have one Gunblade, one Rageblade, your third item can kind of be whatever. Even like Jewel Gauntlet is going to be great. He doesn't gain as much AP as he used to, but overall it's supposed to be a power neutral change. It just makes his build a little less reliant on attack speed. Braum got a really big change to his Syndicate bonus, so when you do play 5 Syndicate and give the hat to Braum, he benefits a lot more from bonus armor and MR, so items like Stoneplate, Bramble perform really well on Braum. You can also go for a version where you'll go for 3-star Braum and 3-star Draven on level 7. I personally think this is the strongest version of the comp, instead of duo carrying Misfortune, which I think when the set first came out, a lot of people kind of play Twisted Fate this way. But I think kind of re-rolling to get Draven and Braum makes a lot of sense because you can kind of re-roll for all your units at the same time. And Draven 3 is just higher cap than Misfortune 2, and this comp tends to struggle to cap out. Veigar is next. Veigar is the same as before. I have a guide for Veigar that's still pretty relevant. Yeah, you can transition it into a lot of the same units from Street Demon, such as like Brand and Ziggs, obviously. Viego, so a lot of these units are performing well. Just again, they do not receive changes, while a lot of these stronger units receive nerfs. So Veigar doing well. Slayers. So Jarvan and Vayne both got nerfed, but the other Slayers were not really touched that much. Mundo got a small buff even. So overall, the same tree, as long as you're not really playing around Jarvan or Vayne as like your main carries, this line is still really good. Slayers overall was the strongest line, reroll line last patch, but it's mostly based on Vayne and Jarvan. They kind of took the bullet for this comp, so if you're playing around Shaco, you're not really going for Jarvan 3 or Vayne at all. It's still going to perform really well. Next up, Street Demon, Rengar, and Jinx. This is Rengar. So Rengar himself got a small nerf, but again, a lot of the, as I said earlier when I was talking about this comp, a lot of the units around him got buffs as well as a 7 Street Demon trait. So this is still going to be performing well. Street Demon version is going to be better than Executioner version now with those buffs. But you can see, yeah, Executioner version doesn't even really show up. Exotech Vex, this is a pretty familiar comp if you've been playing a lot for the past week. I have a guide on this. This comp was pretty much untouched. and it was really, really good last patch. So still really good. I believe Hyperfanes had a bugged interaction that was not in the patch notes that was nerfed with Varus. So Hyperfane's Varus is not as good. Hollowbow nerfed as well. I would just look at the items here. For your Exotech items, just go to other, sort by average placement, and in general, you can kind of use this as like a baseline of what items are good or bad. Hyperfanes is probably still the best item in this line, but it's not as good as before. Amp. So Annie got a buff, and 5 Amp got a buff as well. So this makes Nefir reroll better. I just posted a written guide on this, so you can check that out. Uh, Written by Tristan, actually, who is a very strong player in APAC. So you can find that over here on guides. And I'll also make a video later. I don't have a video on Nefir reroll, so I'll make a video later talking about this as well. But you can check out the written guide for now. My Nefir video will probably come out in a couple days. Bruiser Fiddle, I have a guide on this, still pretty up to date. This comp is really good with artifacts, Blinding Jewels, Snipers, Ascension, Locket for Cho'Gath. But yeah, a lot of the Bruisers got buffed. Cho'Gath got buffed, Gragas got a small buff, Mundo and Alistair got small buffs. Kobuko is a lot better in this line because he has a 2-hex AoE without getting Cyber Boss, which you're not going to have in this composition. So overall, a lot of buffs to this comp. Urgot even buffed. A lot of times you'll play him because you'll already have Boombot active. So yeah, this line is a lot stronger. And as I mentioned before, a lot of the best comps got nerfed, so that just basically means anything that didn't get changed that much is just going to be better relatively. Amp, you can play Amp similarly to like Strat Amp from the first patch. You'll play, because Samira is Street Demon, Echo and Nico are Street Demon, you'll get a little synergy there, and Yuumi is Strategist and Amp, so you'll get a little synergy here. So this is basically like Strat Amp. This version is showing 5 Amp. 5 Amp did get a pretty significant buff, but you could also just kind of go for the old Strat Amp board that was really dominant in the first patch. I have a video on that if you want to check it out. Otherwise, you could, you could just not play like the Mordekaiser and the Kobuko and play more Amp units instead. Marksman, so Xayah got a buff as well as Aphelios. So this is showing the Anima Squad board, but the Anima Squad board actually performs worse than playing around the 4 Vanguard 4 Marksman board. Either way, I have guides out for both of these that are still going to be very relevant. But yeah, it seems like the Marksman is performing better than Anima Squad. Anima Squad got some changes this patch. It's not super clear how impactful they are because the patch notes were pretty vague about it, but it does seem to be performing a little bit better than last patch. This is the Slayers built around Vayne, so this is still not bad. It's like top 10 in comps, but last patch, again, this was the #1 dominant comp last patch, so Vayne got a pretty significant mana nerf, Jarvan got a nerf as well, so it's just a little bit weaker overall. This is with Boombot emblem. 6 Boombot was buffed. I'm not even sure if this was this patch, but it was pretty recently and it hasn't been explored that much. But with like the Cho'Gath and Urgot buffs that came in this patch, as well as Kog'Maw also got buffed, so just a lot of pieces of this. If you do have the emblem and you're able to get to 6 Boombot, potential strong board, you can go there. Cypher board, still going to be good. I don't think there are too many changes here. Another Nefir reroll variant. This is kind of like in between what I was talking about with this one. It's actually the exact same units, I think. This is just like a reroll variant where you'll go for Nefir and Yuumi. Yuumi 3 did get buffed as well. I haven't personally played this, but yeah, Nefir 3, Yuumi 3 seems to be doing okay in the data. This is not amazing or anything, but it's, it's like a top 15 comp. Dynamo Misfortune, I have a guide on this, but as I've said before, I don't think this is a great comp. It is an option as a backup if it's just what you're hitting. Something good to be aware of, but I'm not a huge fan of playing for this. Divinicore Vex, this is pretty similar to Exotech Vex, just running some different units around your Vex, you can go for it if you hit some of these other units or good items for these other units, but you don't hit the Exotech units. But generally, the Exotech version tends to perform better for about the same cost, and these units tend to not be too hard to find. Sejuani can be, but the other ones, it's just a more reliable, stronger core generally for Vex carry. Bruiser Morgana is another comp where it basically focuses around the Morgana buff. Morgana got really big buffs during the patch. It takes longer to deal her entire spell's damage, but the spell does almost double damage. Combined with the duration increase, which is a little bit worse, it ends up that Morgana does about 50% more damage than she used to, which is an absolutely massive buff. So rerolling Morgana and then just using Bruisers as frontline makes sense. A lot of the Bruisers were buffed. Gragas gives you Divinicore, a little bit of extra value there, and this frontline just tends to be the least contested out of all the frontlines. Because Vanguards are contested by Slayers players as well as Marksman players. Yeah, so this is just like a good board to go for. This is a pretty new comp. I'll probably need to do a guide on it at some point, depending on how well it does in the meta. I would definitely keep an eye out on this. I'm not entirely sure how good or bad it's going to be. Golden Ox made a guide on this recently, so it's still around. 6 Golden Ox itself did get nerfed, but Aphelios was buffed and Annie was buffed, who are kind of your key backbone for this comp. So overall, it's going to be fine. Alistar got buffed as well. Jarvan and Veigar did get nerfed, but none of those other units are as impactful on this board. It's mainly about Annie and Aphelios, so still about the same. Another version of Nefir reroll. This is the one that Tristan talks about the most, kind of playing around the Nitro board. And down here we have Zeri. So Zeri was, of course, one of the dominant comps last patch if you were playing a lot, but it's fallen quite a bit. I think it's honestly still pretty good, but I think a lot of people are misplaying it. Maybe people did not read the patch notes. You definitely do not want to put Hollow Bow on your Zeri. So if we just look at, again, this is current patch. Zeri, we can see that Hollow Bow is actually her most played Exotech item, just beating out Flux and Pulse by a little bit, not by a lot, but Hollow Bow is really weak on Zeri now. You can see like the deltas compared to, basically comparing these three right here. Hollow Bow, Flux, and Pulse, just like look at these three. There's a huge difference between Hollow Bow just being really weak. Last patch, it was stacked with itself, it gave 60% crit strike. Zeri usually has about 3 clones up, so it basically gave about 180% crit strike last patch. This patch it gives 40, so really big difference there. Do not put Hollow Bow on your Zeri, very important. I think if people stop doing that, honestly, she seems like she's doing fine, but it's just dragged down from a lot of players who are still putting Hollow Bow on their Zeri. Do not do that. Yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for this patch rundown. Again, this is really early in the patch, so this is kind of just initial impressions on what to play. Again, I have guides on TFT coaching for most of these. The only ones I do not have, and I will be adding them shortly, are Bruiser Morgana and Nefir reroll. So expect to see those in the next few days. Otherwise, if you have any questions or comments about this video, let me know in the Discord, and thanks for watching.